Well, it seems like optimistic thinking can only get you so far when it comes to Nintendo. I was hopeful for an announcement from Nintendo at the Game Awards 2023, and that didn't happen. But regardless of that, I do want to talk about the award show, talk about some of the announcements that I thought were really exciting, but also talk about what some of these announcements might mean for the future of Nintendo, because while yes, I am the Switch 2 2025 guy, there was actually something in here that does maybe indicate a 2024 release for Nintendo's next console, in my opinion. So let's talk about the Game Awards 2023 and recap my favorite announcements. Hello there everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Botox Games, and yes, today we are talking about the Game Awards 2023, a very unbalanced show. I enjoy these, I think, more than most people. I enjoy video game hype events. However, there's the whole conversation about the fact that, these developers are getting 30 seconds on stage, and that's just not enough time, and they're being pushed off the stage by the loud music, and it's not a great award show. But in terms of a show for announcements of new games, they can oftentimes be pretty exciting, although oftentimes they can also be very disappointing. In terms of pacing, I thought the show was done very poorly. There was like one 30-minute block in the entire show that was just absolute fire, which is where most of the things that I cared about were announced. But then other than that, there were just a couple things kind of sprinkled throughout that I actually thought were interesting. But also, it is worth noting, if you are a Nintendo fan, this show really didn't have anything. There were a couple of indie games that were announced, most notably World of Goo 2 was announced, which is really exciting. That's, of course, an iconic WiiWare game, so to see 2D Boy returning to that well and making a sequel to World of Goo is really exciting. But then we also got a ton of announcements from Sega. Now, this trailer was very weird, and they didn't announce platforms, I don't believe. I'm recording this the night of, so maybe in the morning we'll have further clarification on what Sega's actually doing. But they had this live-action trailer where they announced remakes, or I guess actual new games in like 5 franchises. So they announced a new Crazy Taxi game, a new Jet Set Radio game, a new Streets of Rage game, a Golden Axe game, and Shinobi. I believe it was Streets of Rage, correct me if I'm wrong. But all of these looked fantastic in my opinion. Shinobi especially looked really good, but Jet Set Radio is exciting to see come back. It's nice to see Sega, revisiting their historic IP and not just focusing on Sonic, Yakuza, and Persona like they have been. I'm not a huge Sega fan, but I would assume all of these, or at least I would hope anyway, that all of these would come to the Nintendo Switch. So that right there was probably the biggest announcement for Nintendo fans, and it's definitely exciting. I will definitely be playing that new Shinobi game. I love the art style, even though we didn't get to see much of it. I'm very excited for it. We also got the announcement for House's next game. I don't think they confirmed platforms. It's called Big Walk. They're the team that made Untitled Goose Game. I thought this looked really cute. There was also the announcement of the new IP from Moon Studios, the developers of the Ori series. Once again, not coming to Switch, I would imagine, but No Rest for the Wicked looks really cool. And then a couple other quick highlights I want to go over. Overdose from Kojima. This is an Xbox exclusive game being made in conjunction with Jordan Peele. Absolutely awesome. As well as Arcane making a Blade game, Marvel's Blade. I'm disappointed that they're being put on another licensed game. However, I'd be lying if I said I'm not more interested in this than I would be in a Dishonored game. It's just, I'm very tired of the oversaturation of Marvel games, but regardless, very cool. And then this one I would imagine could come to Switch eventually. Bandai Namco has been very bad about this, where they release a game on PlayStation and Xbox and PC, and then a year later release it on Switch in a much more, watered down version. That's just kind of how they do things to get people to double dip in Japan. But Dragon Ball Budokai Tenkaichi 4 has a new title. It is Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, which is the original Japanese title, so they're bringing that over to the West. This game looks fantastic. I'm excited for this. Once again, we'll probably come to Switch eventually, but I will be playing it on my PS5, and I mean, this is exactly what I wanted. As a Budokai Tenkaichi fan, as a huge Dragon Ball games fan, this is the game I've been waiting for a very, very long time, so I'm very excited for this. But there were 2 games that really spoke to me and made me think about the future of Nintendo as well as future hardware. And that is Visions of Mana as well as Monster Hunter Wilds. More so Visions of Mana, so we'll talk about that last. Monster Hunter Wilds, this is the next mainline Monster Hunter game. Very excited for this. I will say visually it didn't look, in my mind at the very least, it didn't look that much of a step above Monster Hunter World Iceborne. But excited to see the next mainline Monster Hunter game coming further than I thought it would be. I thought this would be a 2024 game for sure, but no, it's coming in 2025. We don't even have a window within 2025. I would assume early in the year though. So that's super cool. Probably one of the biggest reveals we've ever had at the Game Awards for a game in terms of its sales potential. So Monster Hunter Wilds, that is coming in 2025, and I would imagine it's currently announced for PS5 and Xbox Series X. I would imagine that game will likely also come to the Switch successor. But then Visions of Mana, let's talk about this for a second, right? So Square Enix has been very good about supporting Nintendo when it comes to these, and I don't mean this with any disrespect, these lower tier franchises, right? With their big budget, high budget games, typically those come on PlayStation only. Final Fantasy 16, 7 Rebirth, even Forspoken, even though that, the game's a meme, you get what I'm saying, right? With these lower tier IP, like Mana, like Tactics Ogre, like various Day Life, and these types of games, right? They're very good about bringing them to the Switch, and usually the best-selling version of these games is on Switch. I believe the best-selling version of Trials of Mana, the remake of the third game that came out back in 2020, I believe the best-selling version of that was on Switch. So for Visions of Mana to be announced here is, I think, possibly our first actual evidence or real hint that new hardware for Nintendo could be releasing in 2024. I know, I'm all against Switch 2 coming out next year, but hear me out. If Square Enix didn't think there was new hardware releasing next year, for example, just hypothetically speaking here, right? I feel like they would have worked hard to make a watered-down version of this game on Switch, because Switch is so successful in Japan, which is where a Mana game is going to be the target, demographic, right? I feel like if they didn't think a new console was coming out next year, they would have worked hard to port this onto the Switch. Because I was looking through all of Square Enix's games over the past 5 years, and they pretty much haven't missed any of these smaller tier games on the Switch. They pretty much all released there. There are a couple possible things that you could say should have been on Switch, like Valkyrie Elysium and Star Ocean: The Divine Force, but for the most part, you have Harvestella, you have Dio Field Chronicle, you have Dragon Quest Treasures and Dragon Quest Monsters, Chocobo GP, the Voice of Cards series. Pretty much all of the Saga games at this point have come over to Switch, I believe. And yes, most importantly, the Mana series has actually been pretty prominent on Switch in particular. Going back to E3 2019, that's where they revealed the collection of Mana was getting a Western release, but also that's where they announced Trials of Mana. The remaster of Legend of Mana was announced in a Nintendo Direct. This is the first Mana game that is releasing since the Switch released that is not coming to the Nintendo Switch. And while maybe I'm looking into it a little bit much, I do think that's a little weird. It is very possible, if my theory is right and the Switch 2 does come out in 2025, it is very possible that Visions of Mana releases on the PS5 and Series X and all that, and PC, and in 2024, and then they just port it a year later to the Switch 2. That is totally possible. But I feel like if that were the case, Square Enix would be making a dedicated effort to downgrade this game so that it can run on the Switch. It is a very pretty game. It looks fantastic, and frankly, it probably shouldn't be on Switch based on how good it looks. But I feel like as a business, as a company that has been so supportive of the Switch, when it comes to these more Japan-focused games, let's say, I feel like they would have made that effort to get it on the Switch. So hey, I'm just throwing it out there. That was my first thought when I saw this was announced for 2024 for only PlayStation and Xbox. But let me know what you think. Do you think this is me, looking like Charlie Day and It's Always Sunny? Am I crazy right now? Or do you think there's actually maybe some potential credence to this idea? I don't know. It's just an idea. I wanted to throw it out there because I did think it was interesting and notable that this game isn't coming to the Switch. But beyond that, before I end the video, let's talk quickly about Nintendo. They won 3 awards, that's all fine and dandy. Baldur's Gate 3 won Game of the Year. I haven't played it, I've heard it's very good, so that seems to be deserving of that. But they didn't have anything to announce. I am a little surprised, I will be honest, just because out of the past decade, out of the past 10 Game Awards, Nintendo has had an announcement at 8 of them, so it is more common than not that they do have something. But I'm not really that shocked, I guess, especially because we already have so many games announced for 2024. Usually at this point, we know around 3 or 4 games for the next year. At this point, we already know 5 or 6, so maybe that's why. But either way, I would expect a pretty strong February Direct next year, maybe January, although they haven't done one of those in a while. They're holding their cards close to their chest, and that is exciting no matter how you spin it, no matter what camp you are on when it comes to the Switch 2 release. We are in for a lot of announcements in the coming weeks. Now, there was not really a rumor. I mean, this guy doesn't miss. Puro tweeted out that there would be a demo and trailer drop for Another Code Recollection, or at least he teased it anyway, right? So we haven't gotten that yet. A lot of people thought that would be at the Game Awards, myself included. I'm recording this once again the night before, so that might drop Friday morning. We'll see. But I think after that demo drops, we probably will be done with Nintendo news for the end of the year. We just got the final trailer for the Indigo Disc, the Pokemon DLC, so after this Another Code demo drops, I'd imagine we are done for the year in terms of Nintendo. And then all eyes will be on, like I said, that February Direct, which I think will be a banger. Let me put it to you that way. So that is going to do it for this video. Let me know what you thought of the Game Awards 2023. What games sparked your fancy? For me, the Dragon Ball Sparking Zero game, I mean, I'm just absolutely over the moon for that. The Saiga announcements were very cool. World of Goo 2 is very cool. And Visions of Mana and Monster Hunter Wilds. I mean, I actually haven't played any Mana games except for the very first one on the original Game Boy. I played it through the collection of Mana. But this one looked fantastic. I actually just popped Trials of Mana into my PS5, so I think I will be playing that soon here if I can make time for it. And yeah, I mean, Monster Hunter Wilds is a huge announcement. I'm not the biggest Monster Hunter fan, but I can look at that and get hyped because I'll play it at least for a little bit. I don't know how deep I'll get into that, but either way, I think it was a solid Game Awards. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and let me know your thoughts pertaining to Nintendo not being there because there were a lot of people expecting something. Of course, this has been Botox Games. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe here for more Nintendo Switch news, reviews, covers, all of that fun stuff, and follow me on Twitter at Botox Games. Until next time, folks, peace.